Have you ever wondered what happens when courage meets honor on the wild frontier? Watch as a cowboy helps an Apache woman only to face war-painted riders at his cabin. Don't miss this thrilling tale of bravery and trust. Subscribe now and join us on this unforgettable adventure. Let's get started. Sun burned low over the dusty plains, casting long shadows across the rugged Arizona territory. Jack McAllister guided his horse along a rocky trail, dust rising in clouds with every step. He squinted toward the horizon, spotting a lone figure struggling with a broken wagon wheel. The woman's skin gleamed copper in the fading sunlight, and her braided hair suggested a heritage deep in the land. She worked with careful precision, yet frustration marked her movements. Jack spurred his horse closer, instinct nudging him forward. He dismounted, dust settling on worn leather boots. "Need some help, ma'am?" he asked, tipping his hat. Her eyes lifted to meet his, sharp and calculating. She paused, hesitant, before slowly nodding. Jack approached, his hands already on the wheel. Sweat glimmered on his brow as he inspected the axle. Her hands moved swiftly, assisting him with surprising skill. Jack noticed intricate symbols painted along her forearms, designs that told stories he could only guess. "I've fixed wagons before," he muttered, "but this one's something else." She said nothing, watching him work with careful intensity. The wagon groaned as they lifted it together, the axle settling with a reluctant creak. Jack struck a few bolts with the wrench, testing alignment. Slowly, the wheel spun freely. The woman's lips curved faintly, the first hint of trust. Jack felt a warmth he hadn't expected from the harsh desert air. "Thank you," she said finally, her voice low and melodic. Jack nodded. "Name's Jack, and you?" She hesitated, then murmured softly, "Ahyoka." The name lingered in his mind like a desert wind. He offered to escort her, but she declined, insisting she could manage on her own. They traveled together as far as a shallow creek, speaking little. Jack kept a hand near his revolver, sensing the dangers that lurked along the territory. Ahyoka moved with calm assurance, each gesture showing resilience earned through hardship and survival in a land ruled by both nature and conflict. As they parted, she nodded silently, gratitude evident in her eyes. Jack rode back to his cabin, unaware that a simple act of kindness would ripple outward, touching destinies beyond his imagination. The desert seemed quieter, the wind carrying an unspoken warning and promise. The next morning, cold wind rattled the cabin's wooden shutters. Jack repaired a fence, hammering nails with steady hands when distant hoofbeats echoed across the valley. He froze, eyes narrowing at the horizon. A group of riders approached, their painted faces fierce, feathers bristling from their heads, eyes sharp. Dozens of warriors circled his cabin, their movements precise and measured. Jack's heart raced, unsure of their intentions. Were they scouts, raiders, or punishment for yesterday's encounter? He grabbed his rifle, stepping to the cabin door, ready for confrontation, though hope flickered faintly inside him. One rider dismounted, tall, painted, eyes like daggers. Ahyoka appeared beside him, her presence calming and firm. She translated the guttural words. "They come not for harm, but to honor." Relief and disbelief clashed within Jack, yet every nerve remained alert. The warriors waited, patient and unyielding. Ahyoka stepped forward, speaking in her native tongue. The leader's expression softened, and he gestured toward Jack. He nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "You helped one of our own," she explained. "In our code, that cannot go unnoticed. We ride not to punish, but to recognize loyalty." Jack exhaled shakily. He had faced bandits, storms, and wild animals, yet nothing had prepared him for this mixture of fear, respect, and history. The desert seemed to hold its breath, watching his next action. The weight of honor pressed upon him, unfamiliar and humbling. The warriors dismounted, forming a semicircle around the cabin. Jack stepped forward, extending a hand cautiously. The leader placed a feathered hand over his chest, a silent gesture of trust. Jack nodded, realizing he had acted well, yet also stood among warriors guided by principles older than his own life. Ahyoka's eyes glimmered with pride, calm and watchful. The air vibrated with history and tradition, cultures brushing together amid the vast desert. Jack felt small, humbled by the presence of those who judged deeds, not appearances, and realized the frontier held lessons far beyond survival and skill. By mid-morning, tension eased. Jack and the warriors exchanged nods, understanding passing without words. Ahyoka spoke of her people's traditions, of honor codes and recognition for acts of courage. Jack listened intently, realizing he had stumbled into a realm beyond settler law, one guided by bravery and respect. The warriors prepared to leave, mounting horses with practiced ease. Ahyoka stepped forward, bidding Jack farewell. "Remember, Jack McAllister," she said, "your kindness is not forgotten. Our paths will cross again, and when they do, remember what today has taught you." Jack nodded solemnly, watching dust swirl behind them. Sunlight reached its zenith, highlighting the desert's rugged beauty. Jack returned to his cabin, carrying a rifle and a new understanding of honor. He glanced at the horizon, imagining riders' faces, the sound of hooves, and Ahyoka's steady voice. Kindness had consequences, some enlightening, some dangerous, yet he had learned its weight. Jack thought of the broken wagon, the woman's trust, the warrior's circle. He understood that one small gesture had bridged cultures, saved reputations, and altered destiny. Life on the frontier was stranger than he'd imagined, richer than survival alone could teach, and now a story larger than himself had begun to unfold. The wind whispered across the plains, carrying lessons from past encounters, echoes of honor, and the promise of paths yet unseen. Jack felt a mixture of awe and caution, aware that helping Ahyoka had unlocked a tale far beyond the desert's dusty horizon. He knew he could not turn back now. Every detail of the day replayed: the cracked wheel, Ahyoka's steady hands, the sun dipping behind mesas, the riders' painted faces. Jack understood that life in the West demanded courage not only with gun and rope, but in the choices that defined character. And he had chosen well. He paused outside his cabin, hand on the rifle, eyes scanning the empty plains. Dust swirled in the wind, and he imagined the distant sound of hoofbeats fading, marking both an ending and a beginning. The desert held its secrets, yet whispered of trust, courage, and lives intersecting in unexpected ways. Jack McAllister returned inside, sitting by the hearth. He thought of the frontier's lessons, of kindness, bravery, and recognition. His hands rested on the rifle, his gaze distant. The story was larger than he could yet grasp, but he sensed the desert had shown him a truth. Small deeds echo across time, touching lives far beyond immediate sight. He reflected on the simplicity of helping a stranger, the profound consequences that rippled outward, and the honor displayed by those who judge deeds above appearances. The cabin, once quiet and solitary, now held the weight of history, recognition, and unspoken respect. Jack imagined Ahyoka riding through the plains, strong, capable, guided by her tribe's code, yet remembering him. The desert seemed less empty, more alive with possibility. He understood that courage was not only in action, but in empathy, in recognition, in the willingness to step forward when others faltered. The sun dipped lower once more, casting a warm glow over the cabin. Jack breathed deeply, aware that a small act had altered not only his life, but perhaps countless others. The desert was vast, unforgiving, yet alive with stories waiting to be told, and he had become part of one. Every shadow, every gust of wind reminded him of the rider's presence, their silent respect, the code that governed them. The frontier was not just survival, but understanding, connection, and honor. He would carry the lessons forward as long as he drew breath beneath the endless Arizona sky. Jack smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and contemplation settling over him. He had helped a woman, and the ripple of that choice had been far greater than he could have imagined. In the harsh desert, kindness had revealed its power, and he understood that life in the West held mysteries beyond the obvious. The horizon burned orange and red as the sun set. Jack McAllister adjusted his hat, feeling a weight of responsibility and pride. Acts of courage and empathy were rare, yet their consequences stretched further than bullets or battles. The story of the wagon, Ahyoka, and the warriors would remain with him, etched in memory as surely as the desert etched itself upon the land. Dust settled in the evening air, the cabin quiet and secure. Jack leaned against the wooden doorframe, watching shadows stretch across the plains. He realized that one act of kindness had connected him to a world of honor, bravery, and tradition beyond his own. The frontier was vast, yet he felt tethered to its living history. The wind rustled through sagebrush and cacti, carrying whispers of past and future encounters. Jack McAllister understood the weight of the day's events, the honor bestowed upon him, and the significance of helping Ahyoka. Life in the West was harsh, unpredictable, yet rich with lessons for those willing to notice. He returned inside, stoking the fire, letting embers crackle softly. His thoughts wandered to the future, to paths unknown, yet he knew one truth: courage, kindness, and respect resonated across deserts, plains, and hearts alike. His life had changed, subtly yet profoundly, in ways he would carry forever. Jack closed his eyes, feeling the desert night settle over the cabin. The horizon glimmered faintly under stars. He had acted without expectation, yet had earned recognition, trust, and understanding. The story of the broken wagon in Ahyoka had become part of him, and he welcomed the lessons of honor and bravery. Days passed after the Apache riders' visit, yet Jack could not shake the memory of their war-painted faces. Each sunset reminded him of Ahyoka's calm, authoritative presence. He went about chores, repairing fences, tending his horse, but a quiet anticipation lingered, as if the desert itself whispered that something was coming. One evening, a dust cloud appeared on the horizon. Jack squinted through the setting sun and saw a lone figure approaching on horseback. It was Ahyoka. She rode swiftly, urgency in her posture. Her hair braided tightly, eyes scanning the plains, every movement precise. Jack tightened his grip on the reins, preparing for her news. She dismounted gracefully, boots kicking up dust as she landed. "Something's wrong?" Jack asked cautiously. Ahyoka shook her head, glancing toward the ridge. Her dark eyes held concern, though her expression remained composed. "Trouble follows me," she said softly, "but not all is as it seems." "Be ready, Jack." She explained in careful, broken English that a rival tribe had learned of her travels. They intended to challenge her clan and assert dominance. Jack's heart tightened. The riders from yesterday had recognized him as an ally, a friend of the Apache. Ahyoka's voice was low, intense. "They respect your courage, but danger comes." Jack felt a shiver run down his spine. He had faced storms, bandits, and wild animals, yet never a code intertwining life, death, and honor so tightly. The frontier was raw, unpredictable, yet the stakes of respect, loyalty, and survival now weighed upon him. Could not refuse her request, even if fear lingered. The next morning, they worked together to fortify the cabin. Boards were nailed over windows, sharpened stakes positioned strategically around the perimeter. Jack taught Ahyoka the settler's ways, locks, traps, and defensive techniques. She instructed him in signals, stealth, and silent movement. Each exchange built trust, blending frontier knowledge with Apache expertise in an unlikely alliance. Despite differences in culture, age, and experience, they moved as a single unit. Jack marveled at her skill and efficiency, honed in the wilderness for survival. By midday, the cabin had transformed into a small fortress. Dust swirled around them, and the desert seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the inevitable approach of danger. By twilight, distant hoofbeats echoed once again. Jack and Ahyoka froze. Shadows stretched across the plains as rival warriors approached, their intent unmistakable. The air was thick with tension, dust mingling with the scent of sagebrush. Ahyoka whispered instructions, gestures precise. Jack nodded, bracing himself. The first rider approached too closely, and Jack raised his voice in warning. The standoff began. Across the dry riverbed, the rival group paused, sizing up Jack and Ahyoka. Words flew, gestures precise, the language of diplomacy and honor dictating action more than rifles or arrows. Jack realized that courage on the frontier involved understanding codes, reading intentions, and respecting unspoken laws of survival. The sun dipped lower, painting the desert gold and crimson. Ahyoka's calm authority guided the exchange. Gradually, the rival warriors retreated, leader nodding respectfully. Jack exhaled, lowering his rifle. Awe filled him. The respect of her people had protected his life. Their departure acknowledged both his courage and loyalty. Ahyoka smiled faintly, pride glimmering in her eyes. The night fell cold over the plains. Jack and Ahyoka sat by the fire outside the cabin, sharing sparse rations and recounting past events. She spoke of her childhood, traditions, and battles survived. He told of the lonely life of a cowboy, traveling trails and surviving harsh realities. Despite language barriers, a bond had formed. Days turned into weeks. Word of Jack's alliance with Ahyoka spread among settlers and tribes. Hostile encounters became rare, his reputation carrying weight. Work on the land continued, but Jack's perspective shifted. Survival alone was no longer enough. Connection, honor, and choices mattered. The cabin became a symbol of mutual respect, courage, and shared humanity. Ahyoka continued her visits at dawn and dusk, cautious yet confident. Together they repaired wagons, guided travelers, and mediated disputes along the frontier. Jack marveled at how one act of kindness helping a broken wagon had reshaped his life. The desert, once harsh and lonely, now felt alive with possibility, challenge, and purpose beyond mere survival. 1. Evening, the sun sank behind distant mesas. Jack and Ahyoka watched silently. Words were unnecessary. They had learned to read the plains, to navigate danger, and to trust. The desert tested patience and courage, rewarding honor and careful judgment. Jack realized the frontier was more than land. It was a proving ground, a bridge between worlds. Night embraced the desert. Jack stoked the fire while leaning against the cabin wall. Ahyoka sat across, journal in hand, recounting travels and encounters. The plains whispered secrets. The moon illuminated trails, and the cabin, once solitary, now held laughter, stories, and trust. The moment was fragile yet profound, beautiful and eternal. In helping one woman, Jack learned the true measure of courage, the weight of honor, and the depth of human connection. He knew that no matter what storms or riders came, they would face them together. Their bond, forged through bravery and respect, was stronger than fear or violence. The fire crackled, casting warm light across the cabin. Dust swirled outside, and the desert seemed alive with hidden stories. Jack reflected on the transformations of recent days, the broken wagon, the rider's visit, Ahyoka's calm guidance. The frontier held lessons deeper than survival, rewarding kindness, courage, and careful judgment. Jack felt a deep respect for Ahyoka, her knowledge, and the strength of her people. The desert, once indifferent and hostile, had become a teacher. It rewarded those willing to observe, to act with honor, and to bridge differences between cultures. Life in the West was harsh yet infinitely rich. As the night deepened, the stars emerged above, bright against the vast desert sky. Jack and Ahyoka remained by the fire, comfortable in shared silence. Trust had been forged in fire, dust, and danger. He understood that survival alone was not enough. Empathy, courage, and respect defined life on these plains. Each day, Jack's understanding of the frontier expanded. The alliance with Ahyoka brought wisdom beyond his years. He realized that the smallest acts helping a wagon, offering respect, could ripple into life-changing events. His life was no longer solitary. Connection, honor, and trust shaped his existence. Ahyoka's lessons went beyond survival. Jack learned patience, observation, and the importance of restraint. He saw how courage manifested in action and in diplomacy, how loyalty and honor were woven into every decision. The desert became a living classroom, the cabin their shared sanctuary of learning. The horizon glowed faintly with the first light of dawn. Jack and Ahyoka prepared for the day, performing chores with quiet efficiency, their routines intertwined. Each task reinforced the bond between them, teaching lessons of trust, cooperation, and respect for both the land and its people. Jack reflected on how one encounter had changed everything. A simple act of helping a stranger had led to recognition by a warrior tribe, friendships formed, and survival ensured. He realized that courage, empathy, and action were inseparable. The frontier was harsh but fair to those who understood its codes. Evening fell again, and the desert was silent but alive. Shadows stretched long across the plains. Jack watched, alert yet calm, understanding the significance of alliances, respect, and preparation. The events of the past weeks had changed him. The desert had shaped him into a man who valued courage, honor, and trust above all. Ahyoka spoke softly of distant lands, travels, and the meaning of loyalty. Jack listened, understanding more of her culture, the codes that governed her people. Each story deepened his respect and broadened his understanding of life in the harsh frontier. He realized that alliances were more powerful than weapons. The fire burned low as night deepened. Jack and Ahyoka remained by its glow, silent at times, sharing glances and understanding. The desert seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the bond forged through courage, kindness, and shared experience. The frontier had taught them lessons that would last a lifetime. Jack felt humility and awe at what he had experienced. The desert had been a teacher, Ahyoka a guide, and their shared trust a lifeline. Courage and honor were currency as valuable as water and food in the harsh plains. He understood that actions, not words, defined character. The night stretched endlessly, quiet except for the occasional coyote howl. Jack reflected on the past day's fear, trust, danger, and respect. Each moment had layered experience, knowledge, and growth upon him. He knew the frontier demanded more than survival. It required understanding, honor, and bravery. By dawn, Jack was alert, his senses tuned to the desert. He glanced toward the horizon, imagining distant riders watching over allies and observing threats. The world was vast, unpredictable, yet ordered by codes older than any law he had known. His life had expanded beyond the boundaries of solitude. He rose, adjusting his hat, preparing for another day. The desert whispered, the cabin awaited, and Ahyoka's presence reminded him that trust, courage, and respect were as crucial as rifle and rope. The frontier had tested him, and he had passed through fire, learning its deepest lessons. Jack looked at the fire's embers, glowing faintly, and felt gratitude. The frontier had offered danger and reward, teaching him that life was measured by deeds, not fear. He understood that helping one woman had reshaped the course of his life and connected him to a world far larger than his own.